Hey, welcome back to the Secret Underground Lair. So our drawers are, now the glue's all set on our reduced width drawers. So I'm going to be sanding everything flush and then working on the doors of the cabinet and the drawer fronts. That's today's adventure. So to sand these drawers off, I'm just using some 80 grit paper with a block. I'll just be sanding until it's close to flush or maybe flush, and then I'll go after it again with some finer sandpaper. But we have, just where these drawers are slightly proud, we'll be taking it off, a little bit of glue squeeze out, and just doing the tops of the drawers just a little bit to get them smooth. I might do that. I probably won't do that with 80, I'll do that with something less. The tops of the drawers are going to have a little bit of wood veneer around the top of them, just because it's a more durable finish than straight MDF. If you bang MDF, you can kind of damage it pretty easily, so not good on edge protection. The surfaces are fantastic, but the edges sometimes need a little protection, so I'm going to do that. And I'm wearing a respirator to do this operation. I'm up close and personal with the MDF, sanding by hand, so just a little bit of added protection. So there is our corner, and the way that has turned out is that first of all, there's no gaps. Got a little bit there where the drawer slide or the drawer gap came through, so no surprise there, but virtually no gaps in that box joint at all, anywhere around the piece. It is just a real nice finish. Extremely happy with that, even where that, I had to narrow the drawer. You just can't see anything. It's just a really nice joint. Very happy with that result. So I'll continue sanding these drawers. I'll come back when I'm done. So our drawers are all, the corners are all sanded. They all came out very well. What I'm gonna do now is just take some wood filler and just fill in these little leftover holes that were to accommodate the bottom of the drawer. It is an easy tendency to scrape off too much filler. I like to leave a little bit on there so that when it's sanded off, it sands flush with the wood. If I press really hard, then I tend to make a little indentation where the filler is, and that shows up the next time I go to sand it. All right, that's what it looks like. I'll just do the other two doors, and then we'll move over to the cabinet itself. So back on our cabinet now. The thing that I want to get to is putting in the drawer slides, which means fixing this in place and fixing this in place. But before I can put the drawer slides on, I have to fix these in place. But before I can fix these in place, I've got this structure here that needs to be done. So fundamentally, it's a piece of, I'm going to use some hardwood go in there to provide a pocket for each of the two doors here. Now that needs to be mounted. I'm planning to use a screw through here into the top of that piece and a screw through here into the bottom of this piece. Those will be the only screws, apart from the bits holding the hinges and drawer slides on, used in this piece. Now, what I have here is just a piece of soft pine just to illustrate, but what I'm going to be making this out of is a hardwood. I have a piece of maple that I'll be using for that. So I'm going to cut that piece now to size, and then we'll screw that in place. Okay, got a piece of maple laid out on the saw here. And I'm just going to take a 3/4 by 3/4 inch piece out of the bottom of it, out of this bottom corner. So a 2-pass operation again, put it through this way, flip it over, put it through that way. And yes, that is a very hard wood. You can see some burn marks here, both sides on that cut, and from previous cuts. So I'm going to sand this down a little bit. Well, I'll cut it to length first, or rough length. It's much longer than it needs to be, so I'm going to cut it off to rough length and then sand it. This piece needs to be 19 5/8 inches long, but I'm just cutting it. I cut it there to 21 inches, so you can do a lot of trimming. You got a little room to spare. Do a little bit more fine sanding on that. But I got a piece that's good enough to work with for now on that, getting it into place in the cabinet. I always like to just sand the edge off a piece like this. You know, on softwood, you run the risk of a splinter, but on hardwood, you can actually get a cut from that edge. So I like to just kind of take that off. All right, now we'll get it down to exact length and figure out exactly where we want to position this and put it in. That is a perfect fit. Now the dimension or the location at the top here is going to be fairly easy to figure out because it's exactly in line with this dado. The bottom I need to measure and mark. So I'll get those marks set in place, then we'll drill a hole and put this one in place because that's pretty easy to establish the position. Then we'll flip it on its back and put that in. All right, as you can see, I got a right angle clamp put on here, holding this in place. And I'm making this piece just ever so slightly proud of this face because I'm going to put a little strip of veneer across here, across the entire face of this. That's a 1/8 inch drill bit. Okay, we're in. Countersunk. So now this piece can fit in here without any encumbrance. Perfect. So now I'm just going to measure and get this to be exactly the right spot, mark it, probably clamp it, and then we can drill it from the back side, from the bottom. Okay, that's our little central drawer divider in place. Even this screw hole is going to be covered up by a skirt that goes underneath and a little leg. So that's not going to be visible. There'll be no visible screws anywhere. What I'm trying to do with these glue joints here is just make sure, again, that I get glue up on the side of the dado, not just enough on the bottom. You may remember we had a little gap right in here for this piece, so I have a little bit of filler that I'm going to put in there. The thing I really want out of this piece is that flush joint there. Okay, move on to this one. Now we'll go get the drawer slides mounted onto the holes marked for the drawers themselves. So we've got one drawer slide mounted, and I'm putting in the other drawer slide, and what I'm doing is using a 1/4 inch piece of MDF here to keep it off the floor of the cabinet, putting the drawer slide in like this, and then using a 1/2 inch piece here, getting them flush with the face here. Once that's flush, I can then mark the holes that I want to drill into the cabinet, and I'm using these larger holes here in the front. So I'm using these holes here and a hole at the back. These holes provide a little bit of flexibility, so the drawer slide will bend out just a little bit if it needs to. And then I have drilled the hole here in the side of the cabinet, a pilot hole for the screw. So I'm going to put 3 screws in, then we can slide the drawer in and see how it fits. Actually, I have not drilled those holes, I've simply center punched them. I punched them, then went in for a bite of lunch and forgot about that. So let me drill out the hole. Okay, I'll put the drawer in. Okay, that's a drawer. With that face on, we are going to be perfectly flush with the front of the cabinet. That's good. I'm very happy with that. All right, I'm going to do the same thing with the other 2 drawers. Of course, with these soft close drawer slides, they do require a little bit of, I call it a break-in, just to kind of get it sitting where it needs to be. Those tabs are going to bend just a little wee bit out, In fact, I think our rear one here is probably a little tight, but that's why when it gets to here, it doesn't just go automatically. I have to give it a little nudge, and then it goes. But we'll do that fine tuning on the movement of the slides later. Let me get the other two in. What I'm doing here is marking the location of the holes on the drawer. You've seen me put this line here, 7/8 of, and I'm measuring this up 7/8 of an inch from the bottom of the drawer to the center line there. That center line represents the center line of the holes on the drawer slide. Then I'm positioning the drawer slide so that the holes in the drawer slide are centered on that line, setting it back from the front face about 1/16 of an inch. And then I am marking the horizontal holes. That lets me move that would let me give an adjustment back and forth on the drawer slide if the drawer needs to be adjusted. And then I'm also marking on that a forward round hole and a round hole back here. So what will likely happen, I won't use that hole, but I'm marking it anyway. So there'll be a screw here, and when the slide is adjusted the way that I want it, we'll drill that hole and put a screw in there. Okay, now we'll go over and mount these slides onto the sides of the sideboard. Okay, this drawer is going to require just a little bit of an adjustment. So let me take care of that. Be back in a second. Okay, so got this drawer in. What it required is a little bit of an adjustment. So 5 playing cards on each side. Brought it in just enough. We'll make a little bit of an that same adjustment on the back. Get a little spacer in there, and these drawers are going to be just fine. Center drawer. Ran into a little minor problem, which I had thought about overnight, but I thought about this overnight, but I forgot about it this morning. Lining up these holes, the drawer slides are perfectly in line there. They're both mounted 1/4 inch up, and of course the holes are exactly the same distance from the front. And yes, guess what? Drilling that hole, I hit the screw coming in from the other side. So what I'm going to do is raise this up another 1/4 inch. So this drawer slide will be ½ inch off the floor instead of ¼ inch off the floor of the cabinet. That does mean then that I'll want to raise this rail up ¼ inch on the drawer itself. That way the drawer bottoms will all be in line. Now mind you, they're behind a face anyway, so nobody is really going to notice this, but it'll keep the drawers all exactly the same depth. So raise this up ¼ inch, raise this up ¼ inch on both sides, and we'll be fine. I'll be back in a minute. And there we have our 3 drawers all mounted and operational. All right, let's move on to the doors. For that I'm going to bring in a big piece of material. We'll do some cutting on the table saw. All right, we have our large panel here ready to go. This is the piece I'm interested in. We're going to get 3 doors and 3 drawer fronts out of this piece if I cut carefully. I've got a piece we can work with on the table saw, so I'll move this off to the side. Just back in scalable business. All right, first bit of cutting is 3 of these doors. Now these are going to be 1/8 inch bigger than I need, but it'll give me a 16th inch clearance all the way around just to set them in for fit. So that's what we're going to do first. Just going to set those in and see how they look. Then there's the doors just set in there. They are a snug fit, which is just fine. Our next step is going to be putting the face on them. So these are a shaker style raised panel door. There's a few different ways to go about making these shaker style doors. When I use MDF, I have a particular method that I like to use. So I'll show you what I could do and what I am going to do for these doors. So I can think of at least 3 different ways, probably 4 different ways that I could make these shaker doors. A traditional way, of course, is you take a 3/4 inch stock, you cut a dado in it, and please form your rails and stiles, and then you insert your panel into that dado. Now, this being MDF, that dado is not going to be very strong, so I'm going to discount that method entirely. Another method would be to make some rail and stiles, but instead of putting in 1/4 inch wood, you take 1/2 inch material and you kind of wrap it, and then you insert your door in like so. So similar to this, but not quite the same. So you cut a rabbet, and then you have your pieces going all around, 3/4 pieces going all around your door. That's an option, but I'm not going to go with that. The third approach is to take a piece of 3/4 inch stock, use a router, and route out everything in the middle here. So you just kind of route all that center section out of there, and you're left with rails and stiles. But that is incredibly dusty and a bit of a waste of material, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I am going to do is I'm starting with 1/2 inch material, and I'm going to cut strips of 1/4 inch material and glue them around the border. And where they join, we'll put in some fillers so it will look like a continuous solid shaker door. That's the approach we're going to take. So I've got the door blanks cut the way that I want them, and they're all a good snug fit. What I'm going to do now is cut the strips and put them on here. And when they have glued and set, then we'll trim the door to its final dimension, taking into account any possible overhang that we might have with the strips that we have put on here. So it's just a question now of determining the scale of these strips that we want to make. I typically make them 2 inches, but on these doors being very small, I think 2 might be a little bit hard, a little bit big, so we'll probably go about 1 3/4, but we'll do a little bit of testing on that first with some drawings. So I'll come back when I'm ready to cut these strips. So I am going to go with 2-inch strips. Here we go. So here's all our rough pieces. Now, of course, they're going to need to be trimmed to exact length. But this is the concept. Voila, shaker style door. So our long strips are cut the right length. They overhang just a little bit. That's fine. We're going to trim it all up. So I want to trim the door and the sides at the same, like the total piece in one shot. So what I will do is just kind of get the measurement now for these pieces and cut them all to length. And I'm just going to do them in pairs. So I'm going to do the left door together, the right door together, and the center door together. All right, so you can see I'm switched the miter around. I'm going to be cutting the pieces on the this side because the miter is closer to the blade this way. Not a lot, but just enough to provide a little more support. And we'll cut both pieces at the same time. That way they'll be exactly the same length. That's how our door is going to come together. Now I'm going to use the nail gun here, just use some 5/8 pin nails, just to kind of tack this in place while glue is setting. I'm going to put up the fence so I can push this up tight against the fence. Then when I can push these up tight against this, then I can push these up tight against this. And by having this side up against the fence, I know that this far right side is flush. My first trim then will be along this side to trim this guy flush, then I'll come back and trim this to make it the same, exactly the same width as that. Hope that makes sense. Nice thing about gluing MDF up like this, surface to surface, is that you don't really need a lot of glue for this joint. The surfaces are so perfectly flat and smooth. There's not a lot of pores that you have to deal with. Of course, these little tacks will be filled in. But you can see we just got a little bit of squeeze out here. Just perfect. Just perfect. Exactly what I want. And there is our shaker style door. Subject to trimming, of course. So I'll do up the other two doors, come back when I'm done. So here are the three raised panel doors. All finished, and I got, well, roughly assembled and put some filler into the nail holes. So we're just going to let that set for a little while, and then we'll sand them down and then give them a final cut to exact size. In the meantime, we're going to go and make the drawer fronts. Now we'll just get them cut to length. The left and right drawers are the same size. The center drawer is 1/16 of an inch bigger. All right, we'll go set these in place and see what they look like. So that's the drawer fronts in place. My yellow level here represents the countertop. So as you can see how they fit in there, we got a nice 1/8 of an inch clearance all the way around each of the drawers. Quite happy with that result. And again, for spacers, again, I'm just using plain cards. That's 10 plain cards, gives me 1/8 of an inch. So nice little technique. Those plain cards come in very handy. Good to have in the shop. So here's how we get the drawers positioned exactly where we want, the drawer fronts positioned exactly how we want them. I've got 10 cards, 10, 10, 10, and 10. So I got an 1/8 of an inch spacer here, 1/8 inch spacer here, 8 and 8. So I got this thing centered exactly 1/8 of an inch where I want it. Then I'm just using clamps to hold the front onto the drawer itself. Now I can take spacers out. And I can take the drawer out and put the screw through to hold it on in place. So with our drawer face clamped onto the drawer itself, I've marked 2 inches from this side where I'm going to put a hole, and 2 inches from this side where I'm going to put a hole. And I'm just going to drill it out here. Now it's actually going to perforate the face, but we're going to cover that up with a little bit of filler. The reason that hole is coming right through is I'm using screws that are nominally 1 inch long. They're flathead screw, so 2 1/2-inch pieces. You know, I get really close to the surface. I can't really stop much before there. And I'm just doing a very mild countersink on those screw heads. There's the drawer face on. Just put a little bit of filler in those holes. It's just a little minor, tiny hole. Okay, so let me get the other couple drawers done. I'll come back when that's finished. So we have our drawers, drawer faces on. The drawers on the slides, the faces on the drawers. A little sticky up, we'll figure that out. And a nice 1/8 inch gap all the way around the drawer. Really happy with that result. So now over on the saw, we're ready to cut these doors down to final dimension. So I'll set the camera up for that, and we'll go through that process. So the center door needs to be 11 5/8 of an inch side to side. So I'm going to cut it a 1/16 of an inch larger than that, running through the saw this way, just to kind of get this edge over here cleaned up. This is the edge that was up against the fence during the glue up. So when I have that edge cut, I'm going to turn it around, take off the other 1/16 of an inch from this side. Then we'll worry about getting the length right. Pleased with that result. And if you look on the edge of this piece here, it's just a nice solid 3/4 inch piece of material. A little more sanding on that and some paint and it'll be looking great. I'm going to make a couple passes here. The first one, I'm just going to clean up this edge here, and then we'll cut, take another little bit off here, then probably one more pass down here. So I'm going to cut this at 19 7/16. Then I'm going to come down at 19 3/8 on the other side. So there's the center door, sitting in with our little card trick. Got 1/8 of an inch all the way around that. That is going to fit in beautifully, and against the drawers, it's looking good. I gotta say, I'm pleased with that. It's looking really nice. So I'm going to trim up the other 2 doors, get them ready, and that'll be it for this video. Tomorrow we'll put the hinges on, do a little bit more finesse here and there, set the top on in place so you can get a feel for what that's going to be like. Yeah, nearing the end, but I'm liking the fit of those doors. I'm liking the fit of the door fronts. So please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.